I couldn't breathe. That's how Maya Bennett would remember it later. Not the kitchen, not the plate on the table, not even her mother's voice. Just that one impossible fact. Air was everywhere, and somehow none of it was reaching her. Have you ever had a moment where your body knew something was terribly wrong before your mind could even catch up? But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. Maya was 16 years old, the kind of girl teachers called mature for her age because she spoke softly, turned everything in early, and never made scenes. At home, that same quietness had turned into something else: survival. She had learned when to stay out of the way, when not to argue, when to nod even if she knew she was right. In the Bennett house, being easy was safer than being honest. So when her throat first started itching at the dinner table, Maya did what she always did. She tried not to make it a problem. At first it was small, a scratchy feeling, a strange tightness behind her tongue. Then it spread fast, faster than her brain wanted to believe. Her chest clenched, her breaths got shallow. She reached for her water, but even swallowing felt wrong. Across from her, her mother, Tracy Bennett, 42, barely looked up. She was still talking, still annoyed about something Maya had said earlier, still carrying herself with that sharp, polished control that made every room feel like it belonged to her. Maya opened her mouth to speak. Nothing came out the way it should have. Her father, Rick Bennett, 45, looked over then. He noticed the coughing, the watery eyes, the panic starting to creep across Maya's face. But instead of urgency, there was hesitation, confusion, the same terrible pause Maya had seen before whenever her mother had already decided what was true. And Tracy had decided fast. "She's fine," she said with a short laugh, like this was exhausting rather than frightening. "She does this when she gets overwhelmed." That sentence hung in the room like poison. Because Maya was not overwhelmed. She was gasping. She pushed her chair back too hard. It scraped across the floor. Her hand went to her throat. Her vision started to blur at the edges. She wanted to scream for help, but all she could produce was a thin, broken sound that didn't even sound human. Then came the sirens. A blur of red lights washed across the front window. Heavy footsteps hit the porch. The front door opened, and a firefighter stepped into the kitchen, took one look at Maya on the floor, and his face changed. "Step aside, ma'am," he said, already moving toward her. "Something's not right here." The terrifying part wasn't that Maya couldn't breathe. It was that nobody in the room was acting like it mattered. Before the sirens, before the firefighter, before the kitchen floor pressed cold against her knees. There had been dinner, and that almost made it worse. Because it was so normal, so ordinary. The kind of ordinary that makes danger feel impossible right up until it isn't. A few hours earlier, Maya Bennett had been doing what she always did at home, trying to get through the evening without becoming the problem. You know that kind of house? The kind where tension doesn't explode all at once. It lives in the walls, in little comments, in the way someone sighs before you even speak. That was Tracy Bennett, 42, perfect hair, perfect makeup, perfect smile when other people were watching. At church, at school events, at neighborhood cookouts, she played the role of the organized, funny, slightly stressed mom. But inside the house, everything had to move around her moods. If Maya winced in pain, Tracy called her dramatic. If Maya got quiet, Tracy called her moody. If Maya tried to explain herself, Tracy accused her of talking back. Rick Bennett was different, but not in the way that saved anyone. He was 45, soft-spoken, tired, the kind of father who looked uncomfortable whenever things got tense. He rarely started conflict. He also rarely stopped it. When Tracy dismissed Maya, Rick usually followed with some watered-down version of the same thing. Not because he always believed it, because agreeing was easier. And Maya had spent years adapting to that. So when dessert came out, she noticed the problem immediately. It was a homemade tart with a glossy top and chopped nuts pressed into the crust. Not a lot, but enough. More than enough. Maya hesitated. "Mom, does that have almonds?" Tracy didn't even turn fully around. A little. Maya's stomach dropped. I really don't think I should eat that. That earned her a look. A sharp one. Oh, come on, Maya. You said that last time and nothing happened. That wasn't true. Something had happened last time. Her mouth had tingled. Her chest had gotten tight. She'd felt dizzy for almost an hour. Before that, there had been a school lunch where she broke out in hives. The nurse had suggested allergy testing. Tracy had called it another overreaction. Rick had said they'd look into it. They never did. Maya knew all of that, but knowing something and pushing back on it in that house were two different things. Just have a few bites, Tracy said, voice thinning with irritation. I'm not making separate desserts because you read something online and now think you're allergic to everything. There it was, the trap. If Maya refused, she was difficult. If she argued, she was disrespectful. If she gave in, maybe nothing would happen. Maybe she could survive one more night by staying small. So she took a bite, then another, and within minutes, the itching started. Subtle at first, tongue, throat, lips, then the pressure in her chest, then the cough. Maya reached for her water, trying not to panic, trying not to make the moment bigger than it already felt. But the feeling climbed fast. Her throat seemed to narrow from the inside out. She swallowed hard. Wrong move. It felt tighter. Rick noticed first. You okay? Maya shook her head, coughing now. Tracy let out a breath through her nose, already annoyed. She's working herself up. Maya stood too quickly. The room shifted. Her heartbeat turned wild and uneven. She felt heat crawl up her neck, and when she touched her skin, she felt raised welts. Hives. Real. Visible. Undeniable. Except somehow still deniable in that kitchen. Mom, Maya tried to say, but it came out strained and weak. Tracy looked right at her swollen lips and blotchy skin and still rolled her eyes. Breathe, Maya, seriously. You're spiraling. Rick grabbed his phone then, but even now he sounded uncertain when he called 911. Not urgent, not clear. He said Maya was having some kind of reaction and maybe an anxiety episode. He let Tracy talk over him in the background, let her shape the story even while Maya bent forward, clutching the edge of the chair just to stay upright. And then Maya saw something she would never forget. While she was fighting for air, while her chest was pulling harder and harder for each breath, Tracy turned back to the table and started clearing plates, as if this was an interruption, as if dinner mattered more. Then Maya's knees gave out, and somewhere in the distance, sirens started getting closer. By the time the sirens got closer, Maya's body was doing what her voice no longer could. It was proving she had been telling the truth. She hit the kitchen floor hard enough to feel the impact in her shoulder, but the pain barely registered. Everything inside her had narrowed to one need: air. Just one full breath, one normal breath. But each inhale came in thin, ragged pulls that never seemed to go deep enough. Her throat felt like it was shrinking shut around nothing. Her chest burned, her ears rang, and somewhere above her, the room kept moving as if this were still somehow up for debate. Have you ever noticed how terrifying it is when the people around you keep acting normal while your world is falling apart? That was the worst part now, not just the choking, the contradiction. Maya could hear her mother talking, still too calm, still too certain, telling the 911 operator that her daughter had a habit of getting herself worked up. Even now, even with Maya's lips swelling, even with hives spreading across her neck, even with that awful, high-pitched wheeze tearing out of her every time she tried to breathe. Rick crouched beside her, but he looked lost. His hand hovered near Maya's shoulder, then pulled back like he was afraid to do the wrong thing, but even more afraid to challenge Tracy. Try to slow your breathing, he said, his own voice shaking. Okay? Just slow down. Maya wanted to scream. Slow down! She wasn't hyperventilating, she was suffocating. Her vision blurred at the edges. She could feel her pulse hammering in her throat, which somehow made the tightening feel even worse. She tried to form words. Nut. Allergy. Help. But all that came out was a broken rasp. Her tongue felt too thick, her mouth too swollen. Panic surged harder then, not because panic had caused this, but because she could feel how close she was getting to the point where she couldn't fight anymore. Then came the front door. It slammed open with the kind of force that changes the energy in a house instantly. Boots hit the floor. Voices moved fast. A fire crew came in ahead of the ambulance, 3 people in dark uniforms carrying equipment, and the first one through the kitchen doorway stopped dead the second he saw Maya. His name was Evan Morales, 31, broad-shouldered, controlled, the kind of person who didn't waste movement. And the expression on his face changed so fast it was almost violent. No confusion, no hesitation, no polite wait to hear everyone's opinions. Recognition. "Step aside, ma'am," he said sharply, already kneeling beside Maya. "Something's not right here." Tracy started talking immediately. "She has anxiety. She does this when—" Evan didn't even look at her. He looked at Maya. That mattered. He saw the things her parents had somehow managed not to see, or had chosen not to. The swelling, the hives, the blue-gray tinge beginning around her mouth, the way her neck muscles were straining with every inhale. The fact that she couldn't answer him in full words. "Can you nod for me?" he asked, voice quick but steady. "Did you eat something before this started?" Maya nodded. "Did your throat get tight after that?" Another nod. "Have you reacted before?" A third nod, smaller, weaker. That was enough. Evan snapped his head toward his crew. "Likely anaphylaxis. Get oxygen on her. Prep epi now." The whole room shifted in 1 second, not because Maya got worse, because finally someone named what was happening. Tracy straightened, offended, actually offended. "Anaphylaxis? No, she is not going into shock. She's panicking." Evan looked up then, and when he spoke, his tone had gone flat in a way that was much scarier than yelling. "She is not panicking. She is in respiratory distress." Those words hit the room like glass breaking. Rick's face drained of color. His eyes flicked from Maya to the hives to the oxygen mask being pulled from the bag, and for the first time, he looked like he understood that this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a countdown. One of the firefighters moved behind Maya, supporting her upright enough to help her breathe while another reached for the injector. Maya could feel hands working fast around her, competent and focused. It should have comforted her. Instead, a new kind of terror hit her. How long had this been obvious? How long had she looked this bad? And why had a stranger figured it out faster than her own parents? Evan asked another question without taking his eyes off her. "Do you have an EpiPen prescribed?" Silence. Not the silence of confusion, the silence of people who know there should be an answer and don't want to say it. Maya's brain flashed back to the school nurse, the form sent home, the recommendation for allergy testing, Tracy tossing the paperwork onto the counter and muttering that schools love making everything into a crisis. It had never been followed up. No specialist, no prescription, nothing. Evan read the silence for what it was. "Has she been evaluated for this before?" Rick opened his mouth, but Tracy cut in. "There was one thing at school, but they exaggerated. It was never confirmed." Maya made a sound then, desperate and raw, trying to force air and truth through the same narrowing space. Evan leaned closer. "Maya, I need one answer. Have you been denied treatment for this before?" Her whole body shook with the effort, but she got the word out. "Yes." Everything stopped. Not physically. Hands were still moving. Oxygen was still hissing. The injector was still being readied. But socially, emotionally. The entire story Tracy had been telling shattered in the middle of that kitchen. Rick looked at Maya like he had never heard her clearly before. Tracy went completely still. And then Evan drove the epinephrine into Maya's thigh. The shot bought Maya time. It also destroyed the lie. For one terrible second after the epinephrine hit, nothing seemed different. The kitchen was still a blur of boots, equipment, hard voices and sharp light bouncing off metal cabinets. Maya was still struggling, still clawing for air that felt too thin, too late. But then, slowly, painfully, something shifted. Not relief exactly, not yet. Just the smallest crack in the wall closing around her throat. A breath came in slightly deeper than the one before it. Then another. Not enough to feel safe, enough to know she wasn't gone yet. And suddenly that was its own kind of horror, because now she could hear everything. She could hear the clipped radio update as the firefighters called in her condition. She could hear the oxygen rushing through the mask. She could hear her father asking questions in a voice that sounded smaller than she had ever heard it. And she could hear her mother trying, even now, to drag the story back under her control. "She has a tendency to make things look worse than they are," Tracy said, arms folded too tightly over herself. "You don't know how she gets." Imagine hearing that while your body is still shaking from almost not making it. Evan didn't argue with her. He did something more damaging. He ignored the performance completely and stayed with the facts. 16-year-old female, he told the arriving paramedics. Rapid onset airway symptoms after food exposure. Lip swelling, hives, accessory muscle use, inability to speak full sentences, cyanosis around the mouth. Epinephrine administered on scene. That report did something Maya had never quite experienced before. It made the truth official. No emotion, no debate, no family spin, just evidence. They moved her fast, out the front door, down the porch steps, into the ambulance under flashing lights that painted the whole neighborhood red. Maya caught a brief, dizzy glimpse of curtains shifting in nearby windows. People were watching. For years, Tracy had protected appearances like they were sacred. Now the illusion was breaking in public. Inside the ambulance, the world narrowed again. A paramedic monitored her breathing while another checked her blood pressure and pulse. Questions came fast but clear. "What did you eat?" Maya swallowed against the lingering tightness. "Dessert. Nuts." "Have you had reactions before?" A weak nod. "Diagnosed allergy?" She tried to answer, but the truth was messier than one word. Not diagnosed. Not because there had been no warning, because nobody had finished what they were told to start. At the hospital, things moved with the same frightening speed. Double doors, bright lights, nurses taking over. A doctor listening to her lungs, checking her throat, asking how long she had gone without treatment before the epinephrine. Maya heard numbers being exchanged, oxygen levels, timelines, medication names. It all felt distant until one sentence cut through everything. "You're lucky the firefighter recognized this as fast as he did." Lucky. That word landed strangely, because luck had nothing to do with why Maya was alive. A stranger had looked at her and believed what he saw. That was the difference. Then the layers started peeling back. As Maya stabilized, the ER staff asked the routine questions they ask in cases like this. But routine questions can become devastating when the answers line up the wrong way. Had she ever reacted to nuts before? Yes. Had she ever been referred for allergy testing? Yes. Was there any reason she did not have emergency medication already? Silence. Then pieces. A school nurse note. An urgent care visit months earlier. A follow-up that never happened. A recommendation ignored. A pattern no one in the room could miss once it was said out loud. Rick sat in a chair by the wall, staring at the floor like it might open up beneath him. He looked wrecked, and for the first time Maya could see that his passivity had not been harmless. It had shape, weight, consequence. Tracy, meanwhile, kept shifting strategies. First dismissive, then defensive, then insulted. She told the doctor Maya had always been sensitive. She insisted they had been planning to look into it. She said nobody had ever told them it was urgent. But that fell apart too, because the hospital pulled records. The school had documented concern after a reaction in the cafeteria. A nurse had specifically recommended immediate allergy evaluation. Months later, urgent care had noted suspected food allergy and advised specialist follow-up plus emergency planning. No follow-through, no prescription, no action plan. No one had to accuse Tracy of anything dramatic. The paperwork did it for them. Maya lay in the bed, exhausted, skin still prickling, throat still sore, and felt a strange mix of vindication and grief. Vindication because she had been right. Grief because being right had almost killed her. Then came the moment that shifted the story from emergency to aftermath. A hospital social worker stepped into the room. Not loud, not hostile, calm, professional, but the air changed anyway. She introduced herself, asked Maya a few gentle questions, then turned to the doctor for clarification on the history of missed follow-up care. Tracy bristled instantly. Rick looked like he might be sick. Maya's pulse kicked up all over again, but this time not from her throat. Because now the question wasn't just what had happened, it was what happened next. The doctor reviewed the case in plain language. Severe anaphylaxis, delayed recognition, prior warning signs, lack of emergency planning, a minor patient. Then the social worker asked the sentence that made every person in the room go still. Do we have concerns about safe discharge back into the same environment without a protection plan? And just like that, the night stopped being only about whether Maya would survive. It became about whether she could go back. Maya had not imagined any of it. Not the tightness in her throat, not the hives, not the dizziness, not the terror, and definitely not the years of being told that every warning sign in her own body meant she was too much. By the time the hospital had all the records in front of them, the truth was no longer something Tracy Bennett could talk her way around. What actually happened was brutally simple. Maya had gone into severe anaphylaxis after eating a dessert that contained tree nuts, the same kind of trigger that had caused smaller reactions before. Those earlier episodes had not been random. They had been warnings. Her school nurse had flagged it. An urgent care doctor had flagged it. Follow-up testing had been recommended. Emergency medication should have been prescribed. A plan should have been in place. Instead, the pattern had been ignored, minimized, and recast as anxiety because that version was easier for her parents to live with. That was the full answer. The firefighter knew Maya was in real danger because he recognized the physical signs instantly. Swelling, hives, airway distress, the inability to speak, the color change around her mouth. He did not sense it, he saw it. He responded the way trained people do when seconds matter. And those seconds mattered. The ER doctor said it plainly. If epinephrine had been delayed much longer, Maya could have lost her airway completely. So yes, she had really been dying. And for Maya, hearing that out loud did something almost as powerful as the medication had done. It cracked something open. A little later, after the rush of treatment and questions and paperwork, when the room finally quieted down, one of the doctors came back to check on her. Maya's throat still hurt. Her body felt weak and wrung out, but she could breathe, deeply, fully. For the first time that night, air reached all the way in. The doctor pulled up a chair and said very carefully, "You were right to be scared." That was it. Not a speech, not a dramatic monologue, just one sentence. Maya started crying immediately. Not because she was fragile, not because she wanted attention. She cried because someone had finally said the thing she had needed to hear for years. You were right. What happened to you was real. You were not making it up. You were not exaggerating. You were not the problem in the room. Rick cried too, though more quietly. He sat with his face in his hands for a long time after the doctor left. The reality had settled onto him in pieces, each one uglier than the last. He had not forced Maya to eat the dessert. He had not laughed while she was gasping, but he had spent years standing next to dismissal and calling that neutrality. And now his daughter had nearly died inside that silence. Tracy did not cry. She became angrier the more obvious the truth became. First, she argued about wording. Then she argued about process. Then she argued that the hospital was overreacting by involving a social worker. But outrage works best when facts are fuzzy, and the facts here were not fuzzy. They were documented, time-stamped, signed. There had been prior warnings, there had been recommendations, there had been opportunities to protect Maya. Those opportunities had been ignored. So the consequences came. Not movie-style consequences, real ones. The hospital filed a formal report for suspected medical neglect due to the pattern of missed follow-up care and the dangerous delay in recognizing a life-threatening allergic reaction in a minor. Maya was prescribed 2 epinephrine auto-injectors before discharge, with clear instructions that she should never be without them. An allergy specialist appointment was scheduled, not suggested, scheduled. The school was given a medical action plan. Her records were updated. Emergency contacts were reviewed. The casual uncertainty that had surrounded Maya's symptoms for months was replaced with official language and procedures nobody could shrug off anymore. And because Maya was still a minor, discharge became a bigger conversation. The social worker spoke privately with Maya first. That mattered too. She asked where Maya felt safest. She asked whether there had been other times she had not been believed when she was sick or hurt. Maya answered honestly. Not dramatically, just honestly. She talked about the nurse form that disappeared, the urgent care follow-up that never happened, the way every symptom got translated into attitude, the way she had learned to second-guess pain because reacting too much always came with consequences at home. Her Aunt Lena Brooks, 38, was called that same night. Lena had raised concerns before, quietly at first, then less quietly. She had noticed how quickly Tracy mocked Maya, how often Rick stayed silent, how carefully Maya monitored herself before speaking. When Lena arrived at the hospital, she did not storm in or grandstand. She went straight to Maya's bedside, brushed hair back from her forehead, and said, "I'm here." Maya cried again, this time from relief. The temporary plan was put in place before dawn. Maya would be discharged to Lena's home while the family case was reviewed and while a safety plan was established. Rick agreed immediately. He looked ashamed and exhausted, but he agreed. Tracy protested hard. She said the hospital was humiliating her. She said Maya was manipulating the situation. She said Lena was interfering. None of it worked, because once the story left the walls of the Bennett house, it sounded very different. Family members found out what happened. Not Tracy's version, the real version. Maya had gone into anaphylaxis. She had almost died. A firefighter had recognized it while her own parents minimized it. That kind of truth moves fast, especially in families where one person has controlled the narrative for years. People who had once laughed off Tracy's jokes about Maya being dramatic stopped laughing. Some called Rick directly. Some called Lena. Some did not call Tracy at all. Social fallout hit first, then relational fallout, then practical fallout. Rick began cooperating fully with the case review and later enrolled in parent counseling focused on medical advocacy and protective decision-making. It did not erase what had happened. It did, however, force him to confront the damage of doing nothing. Tracy was required to participate in parenting education and comply with medical oversight conditions before unsupervised responsibility could even be discussed as part of the family plan. The point was not spectacle. It was accountability. And Maya? Maya changed too. Not overnight, not in some perfect cinematic transformation. The fear lingered. So did the anger. For a while, every meal made her nervous. Every itch in her throat sent a bolt of panic through her. Trauma does that. Your body remembers before your mind can reassure it. But for the first time, Maya had language for what happened, tools to protect herself, and adults around her who did not treat her reality like an inconvenience. Weeks later, she sat in an allergist's office with Lena beside her and an EpiPen in her backpack. The doctor reviewed her test results, confirmed the allergy formally, and walked her through exactly what to do if it ever happened again. Maya asked questions this time, direct ones, clear ones. No apologizing before she spoke, No shrinking, no checking someone else's face to see whether her own body was allowed to count. That was the final shift. The night of the fire truck and the kitchen floor did not just expose what was wrong in Maya's house. It ended something. The old story. The one where she was dramatic, difficult, too sensitive, too emotional, too much. That story had nearly killed her. Now there was a new one. On the way home from the appointment, Lena stopped at a pharmacy to pick up Maya's second auto-injector. Maya waited outside for a minute, standing in the afternoon sun, breathing in slow and steady. Cars moved past. Someone laughed across the parking lot. Life went on in that ordinary way it always does, even after the worst night of your life. Maya put a hand over the pocket of her bag where the EpiPen rested. It was small, light, ordinary looking, but it meant something now. Protection, proof, permission. When Lena came back out, she asked softly, "You okay?" Maya looked up, took a full breath, and for once did not minimize what she felt. "Yes," she said, and this time, someone believed her.